The Galactic Council chamber floated in the silent darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and light orbiting a dead moon. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, each area modified to suit their specific needs. Some breathed methane, others required extreme cold. A few existed partially in dimensions human eyes couldn't perceive. Daehyun stood at the center platform, his simple black suit looking painfully ordinary among the scales, crystals, and biomechanical bodies surrounding him. He was human, and in this room that made him remarkably unremarkable. Behind him, Hyunji adjusted her tablet, pulling up the next slide of humanity's petition. 3 months had passed since Earth's first contact with the galactic community. 3 months of meetings, negotiations, and barely concealed amusement from species who had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. "We formally request inclusion in the Galactic Defense Initiative," Daehyun said, his voice steady. The translation devices embedded in the chamber walls converted his words into 47 different languages simultaneously. "Humanity wishes to contribute to the mutual protection of all member worlds." A sound like grinding rocks filled the chamber. It was laughter. Vrax, the Thularian representative, rose from his seat. His body was a towering mass of crystalline structures, each facet reflecting light in sharp cutting angles. His species had evolved on a world of silicon and superheated minerals. Their bodies were living gemstones, nearly indestructible. "Contribute?" Vrax's voice resonated through the chamber. "Forgive my amusement, Ambassador Daehyun, but your species is barely capable of protecting itself. Your biological data was quite enlightening." Daehyun said nothing. He simply clasped his hands behind his back and waited. Vrax gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the air. It showed a human body, rotating slowly with various weaknesses highlighted in red. There were many red sections. "Your skin tears with minimal pressure. Your bones fracture under stress that our children could withstand. You have a single heart, single liver, single brain. One puncture wound, one well-placed strike, and you cease to function." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Korin, the Meklar observer, activated his vocal processor. His species was cybernetic, having replaced most of their biological components with enhanced machinery centuries ago. The human requires constant sustenance. They must consume calories every few hours or face system degradation. They need specific atmospheric conditions, precise temperature ranges, and regular periods of unconsciousness they call sleep. This is a species designed for a single, stable environment, not for the chaos of interstellar conflict. More agreement. Hyunji's fingers tightened on her tablet, but she kept her expression neutral. She had expected this. They both had. A representative from the Corval Dominion spoke next, her 6 arms gesturing in synchronized patterns. "Our preliminary scans show that humans feel pain at remarkably low thresholds. A minor injury that would be inconvenient to most species would incapacitate a human. How can such a species be trusted in combat situations?" Daehyun finally spoke. "Pain is a warning system. It tells us when something is wrong." "Exactly," Vrax said, his crystalline face somehow conveying smugness. "A warning system that triggers far too easily. Ambassador, we are not trying to insult your species. We are simply being realistic. Humans are fascinating in many ways. Your art, your literature, your capacity for abstract thought, these are admirable. But physical capability? You are among the most fragile species we have encountered. There is no shame in this. The galaxy needs thinkers as well as warriors." "We appreciate your concern," Daehyun said carefully. "However, I believe you may be operating on incomplete information." "Incomplete?" Korin's optical sensors focused on the human. "We have conducted extensive analysis. Human muscular structure is inefficient. Your skeletal system is prone to degradation with age. You lack natural armor, venom, claws, or any significant defensive capabilities. You cannot survive in vacuum even briefly, unlike the Thren. You cannot regenerate limbs like the Vasari. You cannot enter hibernation states to survive resource deprivation like the Kelman. What information are we missing?" Daehyun smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile. "You've analyzed what we are. You haven't asked what we do." Vrax's crystalline structure vibrated with what might have been confusion. "What you do? You survive in your carefully controlled environments. You build your climate-regulated habitats. You have achieved space travel, which is commendable for a species of your limitations, but that does not change your fundamental biological constraints." The council elder Nexum raised one of his many tentacles. His species was ancient, having achieved space travel when humans were still developing agriculture. Ambassador Dae-hyun, I believe what my colleagues are trying to express, perhaps inelegantly, is that we have classification systems for species. These are not judgments, merely practical categorizations. Based on your species' physical parameters, we must classify you as Class 7, protected species status. Which means, Hyunji asked, speaking for the first time. Non-combatant status, Nexum explained gently. In the event of conflict, human worlds would receive protection from more capable species. You would contribute in other ways: research, cultural exchange, resource management. There are many honored Class 7 species in the galaxy. Dae-hyun was quiet for a long moment. Around the chamber, representatives waited. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked bored, ready to move on to more important matters. Frax appeared satisfied, his point proven. We accept your classification, Dae-hyun said finally. For now. Frax's crystals chimed. For now? Ambassador, biology does not change. You will always be what you are. Perhaps, Dae-hyun agreed. However, I would like to extend an invitation to the Council. In 6 months, we will host a cultural observation mission on Earth. We would be honored if representatives would visit our homeworld and observe how humans spend their time. Particularly our recreational time. This caused a stir. Recreation was a concept most species understood, though it varied wildly across cultures. You wish us to observe your leisure activities? Korin asked. For what purpose? Understanding, Hyunji said, stepping forward. You have analyzed our physical data. You understand our limitations, but you don't understand our culture. You don't understand what humans consider normal behavior. We believe this gap in knowledge might be relevant to your classification of our species. Nexum's tentacles waved thoughtfully. An interesting proposal. Cultural exchange is always valuable. Are there any volunteers for this observation mission? Frax vibrated in what might have been a shrug. I will go. It will be educational to see how fragile species entertain themselves. Probably very gentle activities. Perhaps artistic demonstrations or controlled simulations. I will also attend, Korin stated. Intelligence gathering on human psychology could prove useful for future interactions. Several other representatives volunteered. Dae-hyun accepted each with polite gratitude. When the session ended and the various species returned to their ships, Hyunji walked beside Dae-hyun down the quiet corridors leading to the human quarters. They have no idea, she said quietly. None whatsoever, Dae-hyun agreed. His slight smile returned. They think fragile means weak. They measured our breaking point and assumed that was our limit. Should we tell them what humans do on weekends? Where would be the fun in that? Dae-hyun pulled out his personal communicator and began typing a message to Earth. Let them learn the way we learn everything. Through direct experience, Hyunji laughed softly. 6 months isn't much time to prepare. It's plenty of time, Dae-hyun said. We just need to show them a normal weekend. Nothing special, just what we do for fun. In his quarters, Frax reviewed the human biological data again, searching for any detail that might explain the ambassador's confidence. He found nothing. Humans were fragile. This was simple fact. The upcoming cultural mission would be briefly amusing, nothing more. Perhaps he would see their art galleries or their peaceful gardens. He had no idea what he had agreed to witness. 6 months passed like water flowing downhill. During that time, Earth prepared for visitors in its own peculiar way. The Galactic Council had sent detailed lists of requirements: environmental controls, translation equipment, medical facilities rated for 40 different biological types, security protocols. The humans had nodded politely and provided everything requested. What they didn't mention was what else they were preparing. The alien delegation arrived on a cold Friday morning in November. Their shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, and Vrax watched through the viewport with scientific interest. The planet was predominantly blue and green, with white clouds swirling across its surface. Unremarkable, really. The atmospheric composition was suitable for several species, though most would need supplemental equipment. His own environmental suit maintained the heat and pressure his crystalline body required. 12 observers had volunteered for the mission. Besides Vrax and Korin, there were representatives from the Thren Collective, the Vasari Confluence, and several other species, each curious in their own way about human recreational activities. They expected museums, perhaps. Performance art. Maybe some kind of virtual entertainment system. Tae-min met them at the landing facility just outside Seoul. He was younger than Dae-hyun, perhaps in his late 20s, with an easy smile and casual clothing that seemed inappropriate for greeting galactic dignitaries. He wore synthetic pants, a thin shirt, and flexible shoes. No formal attire whatsoever. "Welcome to Earth," Tae-min said cheerfully. "I'm your liaison officer for the weekend. Did you have a good flight?" "Adequate," Vrax responded. He towered over the human, his crystalline mass refracting the morning sunlight into rainbow patterns. "We are prepared to observe your cultural activities. Will we be visiting historical sites? Educational facilities?" Taemin's smile widened. "Not exactly. Ambassador Dae-hyun thought you'd enjoy seeing what regular humans do on weekends. You know, normal stuff." "Normal recreational activities," Corin clarified. His mechanical body whirred softly as he processed. "We understand humans enjoy passive entertainment. Visual media consumption, social gathering in controlled environments, perhaps culinary experiences." "Oh, we do that too," Taemin agreed. "But the ambassador specifically wanted you to see our weekend activities. The fun stuff." Hyunji arrived moments later, carrying a tablet and looking professionally efficient. "Gentlemen, ladies, and honored others," she said, nodding to the various biological configurations represented. "We have a full schedule prepared. I hope you brought comfortable observation equipment." One of the Thren representatives, a being of flowing liquid metal contained in a force field, burbled a question. The translator interpreted, "What kind of activities will we be observing?" "Well," Hyunji consulted her tablet, "tomorrow we have rock climbing, trail running, whitewater activities, and an aerial demonstration. Sunday is the main event. We have participants in the Death Mountain Challenge." Silence. Several translators glitched and requested clarification on the phrase Death Mountain. "I'm sorry," Vrax said carefully. "Did your translation device malfunction? It sounded like you said activities involving death." "It's just a name," Taemin laughed. "It's an obstacle course race. Really popular. About 20,000 humans participate each year. Why is it called Death Mountain if no death is involved?" Corin asked logically. "Well," Taemin scratched his head, "people don't usually die. I mean, injuries happen, sure. Broken bones, torn muscles, that sort of thing. But actual death is pretty rare. Maybe 1 or 2 per year, tops." The Vasari representative, a reptilian being with regenerative capabilities, hissed in confusion. "You engage in recreational activities where death is possible? And injury is expected?" "Expected is a strong word," Hyunji said diplomatically. "Likely might be more accurate. But that's part of the fun. Testing your limits, pushing yourself to see what you're capable of." Vrax's crystals vibrated with disbelief. "You deliberately engage in dangerous activities for entertainment? This cannot be standard behavior. Surely only a small percentage of humans participate in such reckless acts." "Define small percentage," Taemin said. "I mean, not everyone does obstacle racing specifically, but most people do something physical on weekends. Running, climbing, cycling, swimming. Combat sports are pretty popular too." "Combat?" Corin's sensors focused intently. "As in actual physical combat? Against each other?" "Sure," Taemin shrugged. "Mixed martial arts, boxing, wrestling. Great workout. Actually, that reminds me, I need to leave early tomorrow. I have a race at noon." "You personally participate in these dangerous activities?" Vrax leaned closer, studying the human with his optical sensors. "Of course. I do obstacle racing most weekends. It's a good way to unwind after a week of office work." The alien delegation exchanged glances, or whatever equivalent their species used to communicate confusion. This was not what they had expected. Vrax had prepared himself for boring observations of humans engaging in safe, controlled entertainment. This sounded like something else entirely. "Perhaps," Corin suggested, "we should begin with less extreme examples. Surely not all human recreation involves physical danger." "Oh, definitely," Hyunji agreed. "Tonight we're having dinner with some local athletes. Very casual. They're just regular people who will answer questions about their hobbies." The dinner was held in a restaurant overlooking the city. The aliens were fascinated by human food, though few could actually consume it. The conversation, however, was what truly disturbed them. Jisoo arrived in casual clothing, her hands covered in chalk dust and small cuts. She was in her late 20s with a warm smile. "Sorry I'm late," she said, sliding into her seat. "Training ran long." "What kind of training?" asked the Thren representative. Rock climbing, Jisoo explained. I was working on a new route. Really challenging overhang section. With safety equipment, naturally, Vrax stated more than asked. Jisoo laughed. Not today. I was free soloing, more pure that way. Just you and the rock. Free soloing, Corin's translator repeated. Please clarify this term. Climbing without ropes, Jisoo said, as if this was perfectly normal. If you fall, you die. Makes you really focus on your technique. Several aliens physically recoiled. The Vasari representative spoke carefully. You climbed to heights where falling would be fatal, with no safety measures for enjoyment? For the challenge, Jisoo corrected. There's something pure about it. Every move has to be perfect. It's like meditation, but with consequences. Quan arrived next, apologizing for being late. He explained he had been running in the mountains and misjudged his pace. Thought I could do 50 kilometers in under 5 hours, but the terrain was tougher than expected. Took me 5.5. You ran 50 kilometers, Vrax said flatly. For recreation. For training, Quan corrected. I have an ultramarathon next month. 160 kilometers through the mountains. Should be brutal, I can't wait. The word brutal required clarification. When Quan explained it meant extremely difficult and painful, the alien's confusion deepened. Why would you anticipate pain? The Vasari asked. Your species feels pain intensely. We reviewed the data. Yet you seek it out? The pain means you're pushing yourself, Quan said. That's where growth happens. Besides, the feeling afterwards is amazing. You feel alive in a way you can't describe. More humans arrived throughout the evening. Minseo, who navigated dangerous rivers in a small boat. Young-ho, who jumped from aircraft in a wingsuit. Each person described their hobbies with enthusiasm, while the aliens listened in growing horror. This cannot be representative of normal human behavior, Vrax insisted. You have gathered extreme individuals to shock us. Hyunji pulled up statistics on her tablet. Approximately 40% of humans engage in some form of high-intensity recreational activity. The injury rate across all adventure sports is about 15% annually. Most injuries are minor, but serious injuries are common enough that we have specialized medical facilities. You have medical facilities specifically for recreational injuries? Corin was taking extensive notes. Several, Taemin confirmed. Sports medicine is a major field. Lots of research into how to repair human bodies after we break them doing fun stuff. That night in their quarters, the alien observers held an emergency meeting. Vrax paced, his crystalline body clicking against the floor. This makes no sense. They are fragile, they know they are fragile, yet they deliberately place themselves in danger. For no purpose, no survival benefit, no reproductive advantage, simply for this concept they call fun. The psychological profiles are concerning, Corin added. They appear to be functioning normally. No signs of mental illness or societal breakdown. This is considered normal behavior in their culture. Tomorrow we observe their activities directly, the Vasari representative said. Perhaps seeing the reality will provide clarity. Surely they exaggerate the danger. In another room, Daehyun and Hyunji reviewed the schedule for tomorrow. Think they're ready? Hyunji asked. Daehyun smiled. They think they are. That's what matters. The climbing demonstration starts at 8. Jisoo promised to keep it relatively safe. Define relatively. She'll only climb 40 meters without ropes instead of her usual 200. Daehyun laughed quietly. Merciful of her. This is going to be an educational weekend. Outside, Earth rotated peacefully beneath the stars, unaware that tomorrow would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about fragile species. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, moderate temperature. Ideal conditions for outdoor activities. The alien delegation gathered at the base of a mountain cliff face in Siraksan National Park. Most wore environmental suits equipped with medical monitors that Hyunji had insisted upon. The monitors would track human vital signs during the demonstrations, providing real-time biological data. Jisoo stood at the base of the cliff, stretching her arms and fingers. She wore minimal clothing, flexible pants, a light shirt, specialized shoes with rubber soles. No harness, no ropes, no safety equipment of any kind. The cliff rose 40 meters above them, a vertical face of granite with small holds and cracks. This is the warm-up route, she explained cheerfully to the assembled aliens. Nice and easy. Good for getting the blood flowing. Vrax's crystals chimed with agitation. That cliff is 40 meters high. A fall from that height would be fatal to a human. That's why I won't fall, Jisoo said simply. She approached the rock face, placed her hands on two small holds, and began climbing. The aliens watched in stunned silence as she ascended. Her movements were smooth, almost casual. She moved from hold to hold with practiced efficiency, her fingers gripping edges that looked impossibly small. The medical monitors showed her heart rate elevated but steady. Muscle tension was high but controlled. 10 meters up. 20 meters 30. Someone stop this, the Vasari representative hissed. She will die. She knows what she's doing, Hyunji said calmly. She's been climbing for 15 years. This route is easy for her. Easy? Korin's sensors were locked on Jisoo. Her grip strength is barely sufficient for those holds. One mistake, one moment of weakness, and she falls to her death. Yes, Hyunji agreed. That's why she focuses. Jisoo reached a difficult section where the rock face curved outward. She had to lean back, supporting her weight almost entirely with her fingertips. The aliens could see her muscles trembling with effort. The monitors showed lactic acid building in her forearms. Her muscles are failing, Korin announced. System fatigue is critical. She must descend immediately. She's fine, said another voice. A young man named Dong Hyun had joined them, also dressed for climbing. That's just the pump. Your forearms burn when you climb. You get used to it. Used to muscle failure? Vrax turned to stare at the human. You become accustomed to your body breaking down? It's not breaking down, it's working hard. There's a difference. Above them, Jisoo completed the difficult section and continued upward. 40 meters. She reached the top, pulled herself over the edge, and stood up, waving down at them cheerfully. Then she walked to another section and began descending, again without ropes. The descent is more dangerous than the ascent, Korin observed, his mechanical voice tight with what might have been stress. Why would she climb down instead of using a safer method? Good practice, Donghyun said. Plus her ride left already, so she needs to get back down somehow. When Jisoo reached the bottom, several aliens immediately approached her, medical scanners active. You are injured, the Vasari representative said. Your hands show tissue damage. Small tears in the skin, minor bleeding. Jisoo looked at her hands and shrugged. Yeah, the rock was rougher than expected. It'll heal. Anyone else want to try? The aliens declined. The next demonstration was at a trail running event in the mountains. Kwan was leading a group of about 50 humans on what he called a casual long run. The course was 50 kilometers through mountainous terrain with significant elevation changes. The temperature was climbing toward 30 degrees Celsius. This will take most of the day, Kwan explained. We should finish in about 6 hours, maybe 7, depending on how people are feeling. 6 hours of continuous running? Vrax asked. Your species cannot maintain that level of exertion. We reviewed your cardiovascular data. Watch and learn, Kwan said with a grin. Then he and the other humans started running. The aliens followed in a hovering observation vehicle, staying close enough to monitor the humans. Within the first hour, the medical readings became alarming. Human body temperatures are exceeding safe levels, Korin announced. They are overheating. They must stop and cool down. That's just how we run, Hyunji explained. She was in the vehicle with them monitoring the data. Humans sweat to cool down. We're very good at it. We can overheat and keep going. That seems like poor evolutionary design, the Thren representative observed. It's brilliant design for endurance, Hyunji countered. We can run longer than almost any animal on Earth. We evolved to chase prey for hours, even days, until it collapsed from exhaustion. The run continued. Humans fell, got up, kept running. They vomited from exertion, then kept running. Their muscles showed damage on the medical scanners. Their joints showed inflammation. Their energy reserves depleted to critical levels, and still they ran. At the 30-kilometer mark, one runner collapsed. The aliens immediately called for emergency medical assistance. The human's friends stopped, checked on him, gave him water and food, and after 10 minutes he stood up and continued running. He should be in a medical facility, Vrax protested. He's fine, one of the other runners said. Just bonked. Happens when you don't eat enough. He'll be good in a bit. The term bonked required explanation. When they learned it meant complete depletion of energy reserves, the aliens became more disturbed. You have terminology for complete system failure during recreation? Korin asked. It's not that uncommon, the runner said, then jogged away to catch up with his group. When the run finally ended, 6 hours and 17 minutes after it began, the humans were covered in sweat, dirt, and in some cases, blood from various scrapes and falls. They were smiling. They took photos together. Several immediately made plans for a longer run next weekend. The afternoon brought them to a river where Mincio was demonstrating whitewater kayaking. The river churned through a narrow canyon full of rocks and chaotic currents. The aliens watched from a safe observation point above. The water classifications range from Class 1, which is calm, to Class 6, which is considered unnavigable, Hyunji explained. This is Class 5, extremely dangerous. Why would anyone navigate it then? The Vasari representative asked. Because it's there, Minseo said, adjusting her helmet. She sat in a small plastic boat that looked laughably inadequate for the violent water below. And because it's fun. She pushed off and immediately dropped into the churning rapids. The kayak spun, tilted, and disappeared underwater. The aliens watched their monitors in horror. Human vital signs showed extreme stress. Then Minseo surfaced, laughed, and continued downstream. She is enjoying this, Korin said, his voice containing something that might have been awe or horror or both. Her neurological readings show pleasure responses. Adrenaline, Hyunji said. Humans love it. What is adrenaline? A hormone our bodies produce in dangerous situations. It makes us faster, stronger, more alert, and it feels amazing. Halfway through the run, Minseo's kayak hit a rock wrong. She flipped upside down, trapped underwater in the violent current. The aliens watched the monitors in frozen horror. Oxygen levels dropping, heart rate spiking. Seconds passed. 10 seconds, 20, save her, Frax demanded. Before anyone could respond, Minseo rolled upright, water streaming from her helmet. She whooped in exhilaration and continued down the river. When she reached the bottom, soaked and grinning, the aliens surrounded her with questions. Were you not afraid when you capsized? The Vasari asked. A little, Minseo admitted. But that's part of the fun. You learn to stay calm. Panic will kill you. Staying cool under pressure, that's the challenge. You voluntarily place yourself in situations where panic would be fatal, so you can practice not panicking. Frax's translation software struggled with the logic. Exactly, Minseo said brightly. The final demonstration of the day was aerial. Young-ho and a group of wingsuit flyers took the aliens to an aircraft. They would be jumping from 5,000 meters, wearing specialized suits that would allow them to glide through the air before deploying parachutes for landing. This is advanced flying, Young-ho explained. We'll reach speeds around 200 kilometers per hour. The ground approach is very fast, so timing the parachute deployment is critical. What happens if the timing is wrong? Korin asked. You die, Young-ho said matter-of-factly. That's why we practice a lot. Okay, time to jump. The aliens watched from the aircraft as humans simply stepped out of a perfectly functional plane and fell toward the earth. The wingsuits allowed them to glide, swooping and turning through the air in formation. It was beautiful and absolutely terrifying. Why would evolution produce a species that seeks out falling as recreation? Vrax asked quietly. You have no wings, no natural ability to fly, yet you throw yourselves from aircraft for enjoyment. Because we can't fly naturally, Hyunji said. That's exactly why we want to do it. Humans always want to do things we're not designed for. We're curious like that. When they landed that evening, the aliens requested an immediate conference among themselves. They gathered in their quarters while the humans went to dinner. This is not normal behavior, Vrax stated. This cannot be normal behavior. They are either lying about how common these activities are, or human psychology is fundamentally broken. The medical data does not lie, Korin said. Those humans today suffered muscle damage, cardiovascular stress, energy depletion, minor injuries, and exposure to potentially fatal situations. They did this voluntarily. They paid money to do this. They plan to do it again. Tomorrow they mentioned something called the Death Mountain Challenge, the Thren representative burbled. I am almost afraid to witness it. I am definitely afraid to witness it, Vrax admitted. But we must understand. If this is truly normal human behavior, our assessment of their species may require revision. Outside their quarters, Dae-hyun and Hyunji walked through the facility gardens. How do you think they're handling it? Hyunji asked. About as well as expected, Dae-hyun said. They're questioning everything they thought they knew about fragility and strength. Tomorrow will be worse. Tomorrow will be better, Dae-hyun corrected with a smile. Tomorrow they'll see what ordinary humans are capable of when they really try. Sunday morning began before dawn. The aliens had barely processed Saturday's observations when Hyunji informed them that the first demonstration would start at 6 in the morning. When asked why so early, she explained that Subin wanted to climb before the ice started melting. They arrived at a frozen waterfall in the mountains. The temperature was minus 15 degrees Celsius with winds gusting to 40 kilometers per hour. The aliens' environmental suits worked overtime to protect them from conditions that would kill most species. The humans wore surprisingly little: insulated pants, jackets, gloves, and boots. Their faces were exposed to the freezing wind. Subin was in her early 40s, with weathered skin and calm eyes. She carried 2 ice axes and wore crampons, metal spikes attached to her boots. The frozen waterfall rose 60 meters above them, a curtain of ice that gleamed in the early morning light. "This is a good formation," Subin said, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Solid ice, good features. Should be a clean climb. You will ascend that ice using only those hand tools?" Vrax asked. His environmental suit's heating system struggled with the cold. "And my crampons," Subin confirmed. She approached the ice, swung her axes into it, and began climbing. The sound of metal striking ice echoed through the frozen canyon. Subin moved steadily upward, each placement of her axes and feet deliberate and controlled. The medical monitors showed her body temperature dropping despite her exertion. Her extremities were particularly cold. "She is developing hypothermia," Corin announced. "Core temperature is decreasing. She must stop." "She's fine," said Jiwon, another climber waiting for her turn. "You build up internal heat from the effort. Plus the cold keeps you focused. Nothing like freezing to death to keep your head in the game." The alien stared at her. The translator repeated her words, but they still didn't make sense. Subin continued climbing. At the 30-meter mark, a piece of ice broke away under her axe. She swung free, held only by her other axe and her crampons. The aliens gasped in their various ways. Subin calmly found new placements and continued upward. "She nearly fell," the Vasari representative said unnecessarily. "The ice is unstable. She could die." "Ice climbing is always sketchy," Jiwon agreed. "That's part of the appeal. You never know what's solid and what's not. Keeps you honest." When Subin reached the top, she was shivering but smiling. She descended using ropes this time, which the aliens considered marginally less insane than climbing down ice without them. "Your turn," Subin said to Jiwon. "Can't," Jiwon replied. "I've got a cave dive scheduled in an hour. But have fun." Cave diving. The aliens had learned to dread new terms. This one proved worthy of dread. They traveled to a cave system where an underground river flowed through narrow passages. Jiwon wore a wetsuit, a tank of breathing gas, and various lights. The water was cold, dark, and according to the briefing, the passages ahead were sometimes so narrow that only one person could fit through at a time. "Visibility is usually about 3 meters, Jiwon explained. "Today might be less because there was rain yesterday. Stirred up sediment." "How long will you be underwater?" Corin asked. "About 90 minutes if the route is clear. Could be longer if I need to find alternate passages." "What happens if you become lost or trapped in these narrow passages with limited visibility and finite air supply?" Jiwon's smile was slightly unsettling. "Then I solve the problem. That's the whole point. You put yourself in challenging situations and figure out how to survive them. Makes you better at dealing with stress. You practice potentially fatal situations to improve your stress management?" Vrax's crystals vibrated rapidly. "This seems counterproductive. Managing stress by creating more stress." "You get it," Jiwon said, apparently missing the alien's tone. Then she entered the water and disappeared into the cave mouth. The aliens watched the monitors. Jiwon's lights grew fainter as she descended into the cave system. Soon the video feed showed nothing but murky water and occasional glimpses of rock walls. The audio picked up her breathing, steady and controlled through the regulator. 30 minutes in, the video showed Jiwon entering a passage so narrow she had to remove her tank and push it ahead of her. The aliens watched in horror as she squeezed through a gap that looked impossibly small. "She will become stuck," Corin stated. That passage is insufficient for human dimensions. She's done this route before, Hyunji said, though her voice was tense. She knows what she's doing. Jiwon emerged from the narrow section into a larger chamber. Then her light caught something in the water. A blocked passage. The route she had planned to take was impassable. The aliens listened as Jiwon's breathing remained steady. She spent several minutes examining the blockage, then turned around and began backtracking. She found an alternative route, narrower and more difficult, but navigable. The whole detour added 20 minutes to her dive time. When she finally emerged from the cave, her air supply was in reserve. She had perhaps 10 minutes of breathing gas remaining. She pulled off her mask and breathed the surface air deeply. Route was blocked, she reported to the waiting humans. Had to use the back passage. Tight squeeze. Any issues? Another diver asked. Nothing major. Scraped my shoulder on the rock, but it's fine. The aliens examined her shoulder. There was indeed a scrape, bleeding slightly. Jiwon seemed utterly unconcerned about an injury sustained while trapped underground in freezing water with limited air. This is your recreation, Vrak said. It was not a question. He sounded tired, despite lacking any biological basis for fatigue. Best way to spend a Sunday morning, Jiwon confirmed. The main event was in the afternoon, the Death Mountain Challenge. Thousands of humans had gathered at the starting line of what was officially described as an extreme obstacle course race. The course stretched 20 kilometers through mountains and valleys, featuring walls to climb, ropes to traverse, ice, water to swim through, and various other obstacles designed to test human endurance and determination. Taemin was there, wearing a numbered bib and looking nervous but excited. This is my third year, he told the aliens. I've never finished in under 4 hours, but I'm feeling good today. Maybe I'll break my record. You have participated in this event twice before? Corin asked, despite knowing the difficulty and injury risk. Because of it, Taemin corrected. Last year I tore a muscle in my leg at kilometer 15. This year I've trained better. I want to finish. You injured yourself severely and your response was to return and attempt it again? Of course. Can't let it beat you, right? The race began. Thousands of humans surged forward, immediately encountering a series of wooden walls they had to climb over. Then they crawled under barbed wire through mud. Then they carried heavy sandbags up a steep hill. The medical monitors lit up like warning displays on a failing spacecraft. Multiple humans showing muscle damage, Corin reported. Cardiovascular stress is extreme. Joint inflammation is widespread. Energy depletion is occurring faster than recommended safety thresholds. How long will this continue? The Vasari representative asked. The course record is 3 hours and 42 minutes, Hyunji said. Most people finish between 4 and 6 hours. Some take longer. They watched as humans helped each other over obstacles. When someone fell, others stopped to help them up. When someone showed signs of quitting, their friends encouraged them to continue. The camaraderie was touching, but the activity itself remained horrifying to the aliens. At the 10-kilometer mark, there was an ice water crossing. Humans jumped into water that was barely above freezing, swam across a 50-meter pool, and climbed out shivering violently. Their body temperatures dropped dangerously. They kept going. Taemin appeared at the 15-kilometer mark, the same distance where he had injured himself the previous year. He was exhausted, covered in mud and scratches, but moving steadily. Then he reached a rope climb, a thick rope hanging 20 meters above a muddy pool. He began to climb. Halfway up, the aliens could see him struggling. His muscles were failing. His grip was weakening. The medical monitors showed dangerous levels of fatigue. He's going to fall, Vrak said. Taemin's hand slipped. He caught himself with his other hand, held on with pure determination, and continued climbing. When he reached the top, he pulled himself over the platform and lay there for a moment, breathing hard. Then he stood up and continued. His body should have quit, Corin said quietly. The biological signals indicated system failure. How did he continue? Willpower, Hyunji said simply. The body has limits, but the mind can push past them. Humans are very good at ignoring our body's warnings when we want something badly enough. Near the finish line, 3 hours and 58 minutes into the race, Taemin stumbled. He fell to his hands and knees, clearly at his limit. The aliens waited for him to quit. Instead, he stood up, walked the final 100 meters, and crossed the finish line. His friends cheered. He collapsed immediately after, but he was smiling. Medical teams moved through the finishing area, treating injuries. The aliens observed the treatments: muscle tears, bone fractures, severe dehydration, hypothermia, cuts, bruises, sprains. One person had separated their shoulder but finished anyway. "This is normal?" Vrax asked a medic. "Pretty standard for this event," the medic confirmed. "We see worse at the longer races." "There are longer races?" "Oh yeah. 100-kilometer ultramarathons, multi-day adventure races, Ironman triathlons. This is actually considered moderate difficulty." That evening, after the demonstrations concluded, Dae-hyun joined the aliens for a final discussion. He brought Ji-hoon with him, a quiet man in military uniform. "This is Ji-hoon," Dae-hyun introduced. "He's a Special Forces soldier. I thought he might provide some context for what you observed this weekend." Vrax turned his optical sensors on the soldier. "Your training must be extraordinarily difficult given human fragility and the demands of military service." Ji-hoon shrugged. "It's tough, sure. We did a 30-kilometer ruck march this morning with 20-kilo packs. Pretty standard morning workout." "That was your military training?" "The march? Just our daily morning routine. The actual training comes after." Corin leaned forward. "The extreme activities we observed this weekend, do they compare to military training?" "Some of it," Ji-hoon said. "The obstacle race was similar to our basic course, though ours has more technical challenges. The climbing, running, swimming, all that is part of standard conditioning. We probably push a bit harder, but not by much." "You push harder than the Death Mountain Challenge?" The Vasari representative sounded faint. "We have to. Combat is harder than any race. You need to be ready for anything. So military personnel engage in more extreme activities than civilian recreational athletes," Corin summarized. "But the civilians we observed, they were not military. They were teachers, office workers, scientists, ordinary citizens." "Right," Dae-hyun confirmed. "That's what we wanted you to see. These aren't our elite warriors. These are normal humans doing normal weekend activities." The aliens sat in silence, processing this information. Finally, Vrax spoke. "We classified you as fragile. We saw your weak bones, thin skin, and vulnerable organs. We were correct in our assessment of those facts. But," Dae-hyun prompted, "but we did not understand what you do with that fragility. You do not protect yourselves. You do not limit yourselves. You break yourselves deliberately and repeatedly. Then you heal and become stronger. This is your strategy?" "That's human existence," Dae-hyun said. "We've always been fragile. So we became adaptable instead. We push until we break, learn from breaking, and push harder next time." Corin's processors hummed. "Your entire species practices voluntary stress conditioning. You deliberately subject yourselves to damage to improve your tolerance for damage. Now you're getting it." "This changes our assessment," Vrax admitted. "Significantly." The Galactic Council chamber was more crowded than usual. Word had spread about the human observation mission. Representatives who had not attended the weekend visit now gathered to hear the report. The 12 observers sat in a special section, and every sensor in the room was focused on them as Council Elder Nexum called the session to order. "We convene to hear the cultural observation report regarding humanity," Nexum announced. "Observer Vrax, please present your findings." Vrax rose, his crystalline body reflecting the chamber lights. He had prepared extensively for this presentation. What he had witnessed on Earth had challenged everything he thought he understood about strength, weakness, and survival. "Honored council members, I must begin with an admission. Our initial classification of humanity was based on incomplete data. We analyzed their biology correctly, but we failed to understand their psychology." He activated the holographic display. It showed footage from the weekend: Jisoo climbing without safety equipment, Quan running through mountains for hours, Minseo navigating deadly rapids, Young-ho falling through the sky in a wingsuit, Subin ascending frozen waterfalls, Ji-won squeezing through underwater caves, and thousands of humans suffering through the Death Mountain Challenge. The chamber filled with sounds of shock and confusion from representatives who had not witnessed these events. "These recordings show humans engaging in recreational activities," Vrax continued. "Not military training, not survival situations, recreation. Activities they choose to do during leisure time, activities they pay money to experience." Corin rose to join him. I will present the medical data. The display shifted to show biological readings. Heart rates exceeding recommended limits, muscle damage accumulating over hours of activity, body temperatures fluctuating outside safe ranges, energy reserves depleting to critical levels, pain responses triggering continuously. These readings represent normal human recreational activity. The humans were aware of this damage occurring. They continued anyway. Why would they do this? A representative asked. What evolutionary advantage does voluntary suffering provide? That is the critical question, Vrac said. We asked the humans this repeatedly. Their answers were consistent. They do it to become stronger. They do it to test themselves. They do it because it is challenging. They do it because it makes them feel alive. Hyunji stood from the human delegation area. May I provide context, Council Elder? Nexum gestured permission. Hyunji moved to the center platform, her small human form surrounded by larger, stronger-looking species. Humanity evolved on a world that was trying to kill us constantly. We lacked natural weapons, armor, or environmental resistances. We survived through adaptability and endurance. Our ancestors ran prey animals to death over days of continuous pursuit. They survived injuries that would be fatal without treatment. They adapted to environments ranging from frozen tundras to scorching deserts. She pulled up an image of human evolution. We developed something unique, the ability to deliberately stress our systems to make them stronger. When we run, our muscles develop small tears. When they heal, they grow stronger. When we stress our bones, they become denser. When we push our cardiovascular system, it becomes more efficient. Pain is not just a warning for us. It is a signal that we are growing. Dae-hyun joined her. You observed our civilians this weekend. People with ordinary jobs, living ordinary lives, who spend their free time doing extraordinary things. This is not unusual behavior for our species. Approximately 40% of humans engage in high-intensity recreational activities. Many others engage in moderate physical challenges. We teach our children to climb trees, swim in oceans, ride on vehicles at high speeds. We consider this normal childhood development. Your children? The Vasari representative sounded alarmed. You expose your offspring to danger intentionally? Calculated danger, Hyunji corrected. We supervise them. But yes, we believe children should learn to take risks, fall down, get hurt, and recover. It teaches them resilience. It teaches them that pain is temporary and survivable. Vrac spoke again. We must also address the military implications. We met with a human soldier named Ji-hoon. His morning routine is comparable to the civilian activities we observed. His actual military training exceeds it. Human soldiers are conditioned through methods that would be considered torture for most species. They volunteer for this, Korin added. Human military service is voluntary in most nations. They choose to undergo this conditioning. The soldier Ji-hoon told us that combat is harder than any race or training exercise. Therefore, they must train harder than they think possible, to prepare for what they think impossible. The council chamber buzzed with conversation. Nexum raised a tentacle for silence. This is deeply concerning information. Are we to understand that humanity's entire population is essentially preconditioned for warfare through their recreational culture? Not warfare specifically, Dae-hyun said carefully. We condition ourselves for challenge, for pushing past limits, for surviving and thriving in difficult circumstances. Warfare is simply one application of these traits. But you cannot deny the military advantages, another representative said. A species that voluntarily suffers, that pushes past biological warnings, that treats injury as a temporary setback rather than a crisis. These are combat advantages. They are survival advantages, Hyunji corrected. Humans want to survive. We want to protect what we care about. We want to explore, create, and grow. All of this requires pushing past comfort and safety. So we practice pushing boundaries constantly, in every aspect of our lives. Vrac stepped forward again. I must share a personal observation. During the Death Mountain Challenge, I watched a human named Tai-min. His medical readings indicated complete system failure. His muscles were damaged. His energy was depleted. His body was sending every possible signal to stop. He fell to his hands and knees. Every biological indicator said he could not continue. The hologram showed the moment. Tai-min on the ground, clearly at his absolute limit. I was certain he would quit, Vrac said quietly. Then he stood up. His body had nothing left to give. His mind gave anyway. He walked to the finish line and collapsed only after crossing it. This is when I understood. Humans have biological limits, certainly, But they also have the ability to ignore those limits when necessary. This is not a physical advantage. This is a psychological one. And it is terrifying. Corin activated another display. We have analyzed human history. They have been fighting each other for thousands of years. Humans have developed warfare to an extraordinary level because they frequently practiced on themselves. Every military innovation, every tactical doctrine, every combat strategy was tested in conflicts with other humans. They are experienced warriors because they have been at war with themselves for their entire history. We are more peaceful now, Daehyun interjected. Earth has not seen a major conflict in decades. We came to space hoping to leave that history behind. But the conditioning remains, Corin said. You do not train for war, but you train as if for war anyway. Your recreational culture maintains combat-ready psychology across your entire population. Nexum considered this information carefully. Observer Vrax, what is your recommendation regarding humanity's classification? Vrax's crystals chimed softly. When we arrived on Earth, I believed humans were fragile, weak, and unsuitable for military service. After this weekend, I understand that fragility and weakness are not the same thing. Humans are fragile, yes. They break easily. But they are not weak. They break, and then they become stronger. They are injured, and then they adapt. They face impossible challenges and find ways to make them possible. He paused, his optical sensors sweeping across the council chamber. I recommend immediate reclassification. Humanity should not be Class 7 protected species. They do not need our protection. They need our respect. Agreed, Corin stated. I recommend Class 2, voluntary combatant species, with a special notation regarding psychological resilience and pain tolerance. Human soldiers would be extremely effective in combat situations, not despite their fragility, but because they have spent their entire lives learning to function while damaged. The debate lasted for hours. Some representatives argued for even higher classification. Others worried about humanity's warrior culture. Finally, Nexum called for a vote. All in favor of reclassifying humanity from Class 7 protected species to Class 2, voluntary combatant species? The vote was nearly unanimous. Only 3 species abstained, wanting more data. None voted against. It is decided, Nexum announced. Humanity is hereby reclassified as Class 2. Ambassador Daehyun, your original petition for inclusion in the Galactic Defense Initiative is approved. Humanity may contribute forces to mutual defense operations. Daehyun bowed slightly. Thank you, Council Elder. We are honored by this trust. There will be conditions, Nexum added. Human military personnel will undergo psychological evaluation by galactic standards. We must ensure they understand the difference between recreational challenge and actual warfare. Understood and accepted, Daehyun agreed. As the council session ended, Vrax approached the human delegation. Ambassador, I must apologize. I mocked your species when we first met. I called you fragile and weak. I was arrogant and wrong. You were working with incomplete information, Daehyun said diplomatically. We should have explained better from the start. Why did you not? Vrax asked. You could have told us about your recreational culture. Instead, you invited us to observe. Why? Daehyun smiled. Because you needed to see it to believe it. If we had simply told you that humans climb mountains for fun, that we swim in dangerous waters, that we run until our bodies fail, you would have thought we were exaggerating or lying. Some things must be witnessed to be understood. You are wise, Vrax admitted. Perhaps dangerously insane, but wise. We prefer enthusiastically adventurous, Hyunji said with a grin. Corin approached as well. I have a question, if I may. The Death Mountain Challenge, is there a beginner version? Something less extreme? The humans exchanged glances. There are shorter obstacle races, Taemin said. He had accompanied the delegation back to the council station. 5 kilometers with basic obstacles. We could arrange for you to try one if you're interested. I am interested, Vrax said suddenly. This weekend showed me that I have lived my entire existence avoiding challenge, seeking comfort and safety. Watching humans push themselves made me wonder what I might be capable of if I tried. We have a children's race that might be appropriate for beginners, Hyunji suggested diplomatically. I will attempt the adult version, Vrax said firmly. Even if I fail, the attempt will teach me something. Is that not the human way? Now you're thinking like a human, Daehyun laughed. Okay, we'll sign you up. But start training now. The next race is in 2 months. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. More aliens requested to participate in human recreational activities. What started as curiosity became a movement. Humans began hosting adventure races and obstacle courses specifically designed for various alien physiologies. The events were difficult, sometimes dangerous, and increasingly popular. Frex completed his first 5-kilometer obstacle race in just under 2 hours. He finished in last place. He immediately signed up for another race. When asked why he would repeat such a difficult experience, he quoted something a human had told him. "Pain is temporary. Growth is forever." The Vasari representative discovered rock climbing and found that his regenerative abilities made it less dangerous for him than for humans, but no less challenging. The Thren representative took up endurance running, fascinated by the meditative aspects of long-distance suffering. Corin modified his chassis to participate in underwater challenges, finding that cave diving required a different kind of courage than he had ever experienced. 6 months after the classification change, the first mixed-species adventure race was held on Earth. Humans and aliens competed together, not against each other, but against the course and their own limits. It was difficult. Several participants were injured. Everyone finished exhausted. They all signed up for the next race. In the council chamber, Nexum reviewed the reports with satisfaction. Cultural exchange was occurring in unexpected ways. Humans were learning about alien capabilities and limitations. Aliens were learning about human psychology and resilience. Both sides were developing respect through shared suffering. They were right, Nexum told his aide. We did not understand what fragility meant to them. We saw weakness where there was strength. We saw limitations where there was potential. Do you think they will be good soldiers? The aide asked. Nexum considered the question. I think they will be good soldiers if they must be, but I hope they never have to be. Let them teach us about challenge and growth instead. Let them show the galaxy that strength is not about how much you can withstand, but about how much you can overcome. On Earth, Dae-hyun and Hyun-ji stood at the finish line of another obstacle race, watching humans and aliens cross together, helping each other over the final obstacles. We changed their minds, Hyun-ji said. We showed them who we are, Dae-hyun corrected. They changed their own minds once they saw the truth. Humans are fragile, but fragility taught us to be unbreakable, and now they are learning the same lesson. A group of finishers passed by, humans and aliens together, covered in mud and exhaustion and joy. One alien asked a human how soon they could sign up for a longer race. The human laughed and suggested they try a marathon next. This is better than we hoped, Hyun-ji observed. This is what we always knew, Dae-hyun said. Humans make friends by suffering together. How the whole galaxy can be our friends. They watched the sun set over the mountains where Jisoo was probably climbing something dangerous, where Kwan was probably running until he collapsed, where thousands of humans were probably doing impossible things just to see if they could. And now aliens were joining them, learning that impossible was just another word for not yet accomplished. The galaxy had mocked humanity's fragile bodies. Now they understood what humans did with those fragile bodies on weekends. Anything they wanted. And they were teaching the galaxy to do the same.